Hi everybody, today we're going to show you how to install a bee package into your hive, and we've got a very special guest to show you how. Recently we had the pleasure of hosting one of the world's most prominent beekeepers and renowned author of The Practical Beekeeper, Michael Bush. He's also a prolific contributor to online beekeeping communities. He's churned out more than 50,000 beekeeping posts, the gold standard for diverse and common sense beekeeping practices. We were super excited to have him here to show some newbies the ins and outs of installing a package of bees. So I'll let Michael take over from here.
We're going to install a package here, but I want to do a little background so you kind of understand some of the principles here. One of the things is if you have a screen bottom board, it may confuse the bees. Basically, this package is a lot like a swarm in the sense that they're homeless, they have a queen, they're giving off the same pheromones, they kind of think they're a swarm because they're homeless bees, you know, they don't have a home right now. So the way they get organized is by the smell that the bees give off, which is called nasinoff, which smells a lot like lemongrass oil. That's the smell that they give off to get organized, plus the queen gives off certain odors that they get organized around. Well, here's the problem with the screen bottom board is if I leave this wide open, and now I put the hive on top and I shake the bees in, a lot of bees are going to go in the air, they're going to come back and they're going to go by smell and they're going to end up under here hanging on the screen. And I don't really want to confuse them. I want them to find their way back to the cluster and the queen and not have a screen wire in their way. Does that make sense? So what I want to do is, if this has multiple settings, I want to put it at the tightest setting to the bottom. Now if you have some other kind of hive and it doesn't have multiple settings like this one does, where you can put it at a lower or higher space, then I'd probably cut a piece of cardboard or something and put in on your screen bottom board to block that until they get settled in, because that smell will confuse them and you could end up with a bunch of them hanging on the outside. Also, if you leave it wide open, bees are looking for an enclosed space, and if you leave a wide open screen bottom board and install a package, sometimes they abscond because this is not a wide open, this is not an enclosed space, it's wide open on the bottom. So I would close it and I'd put it on the top setting if you have one. If you don't, then I'd put something on the inside and cover this. Does that make sense? Another thing, I'm just going to mention it now since we're still talking about what a swarm would do. What a swarm does when they get in a tree is they go straight to the top and they hang from the top and they start building comb down, right? So part of the problem when you put bees in here is they're going to want to do the same thing. And in this case, I've got an inner cover that has a hole here, and I've got a cover that has some space here. Well, I don't want them to crawl up here and start hanging from the rafters and building comb up here. So I'm going to block that hole with a brick or I could use a little board or something. I could staple some screen wire over it. There's a lot of things I could do, but I need to close that so they won't crawl up here and be hanging from the roof. Does that make sense? So in this case, I've got this little brick I'm going to put on that and it'll block that hole. And the bees can't move this because it's too heavy. They can't move much anything if it's very heavy at all. Now, let's talk a little bit about, if you go out on YouTube, you'll find about 100 different ways to do this, and I'm sure somebody succeeded with all of those ways sometime or another, and I'm going to recommend you don't do most of the things that most of them are telling you to do. One of them is they like to spray them down with sugar. I watched some guy on YouTube, he sprayed them all down until they were all just sopping wet on the bottom, knocked them all down on the bottom, and then he talks for a while, and then he does it again, and then he does it again, and then he does it again, and by the time he's done, he's got a bunch of drowned bees in the bottom of the box. I've seen too many sticky dead bees in my life. I don't like spraying sugar on them myself. It does keep them from flying, but if that's really what you're worried about, you could spray some water on them. Also, let's talk a little bit about protective gear. In theory, these guys are pretty calm and pretty easy to get along with, and I've installed packages with no protective gear on it, and I've done it often enough to regret that I tried to install them without protective gear on. So I would recommend you wear protective gear even when you're getting a swarm. When, you know, about the only time I don't wear protective gear when I'm getting a swarm is if I don't have it handy. You know, if there's a swarm there and it's probably not going to be here when I get back, so I'll just go ahead and do it. But I shook one down the back of my neck once, a swarm at 20 feet up a ladder, and that's when I decided I wasn't getting swarms anymore without protective gear. So just so you know, I would recommend wearing it. Now, you could probably get by with a veil and gloves if you got fairly calm bees, which in Australia you seem to. In the US, you usually do, but there's no guarantees. So I'd wear some protective gear. This is my favorite, is a jacket with the mesh, because the wind kind of blows right through it and it stays nice and cool. And you've got a veil to protect your face, and For gloves, I just like a pair of leather gloves because too often I want to not have gloves on so I can feel what I'm doing, and these are a lot easier to get on and off, and they're cheaper to buy than the ones that come all the way up to here, and they're cooler because they don't come all the way up to here. But you can wear whatever works for you, but I recommend some protective gear. Now you'll see a lot of people who will install them and they'll put the box in here, and then because they want to be gentle with the bees. Well, the fact is, the bees don't get that upset knocking them in here. It really isn't that big a deal one way or the other. The problem with putting the box in here is, again, they tend to just crawl to the top and start building comb, and if that is the top, they just start building comb in the box, and that's not where I want them. I want them on the frames. So I would not recommend putting the box in there. I would shake them all in, put the box out front. And if the queen's in here and most of the bees are in here, the rest of them will move in. It's not a problem. Does that make sense? So about now, you start to feel like Pandora, right? You have a box full of 10,000, 20,000 stinging insects and you're about to open it. And there's no putting them back in the box once you do that, right? So get all your stuff ready. Make sure you're ready to do what you're gonna do. We're gonna install them in this box. I'm gonna take the middle frames out because I want some room to shake them in, and then I'll put these frames back in after I get the bees in.
To keep up to date with all the latest episodes, please subscribe to the FlowHive YouTube channel. And if you have any questions or suggestions, pop them in the box below and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as we can.